The Galactic Accord had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 47 different species lived together under one government. They had cities that floated in space. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in days. They believed they were the greatest civilizations that ever existed. When humans first left their small blue planet called Earth, the Accord watched them with amusement. These strange creatures with soft skin and short lives were interesting, but nothing special. The great species of the galaxy had lived for millions of years. Humans had only discovered fire a few thousand years ago. They were like children learning to walk. The Accord gave humanity a special title. They called them a junior species. This meant humans could join the galactic community, but they had no real power. They could not vote in the council. They could not own property in most systems. They were allowed to work in the dangerous places that other species did not want to go. For 30 years, humanity accepted this treatment. They worked in mining colonies on the edge of known space. They cleaned the waste systems of alien stations. They smiled when other species made jokes about their small brains and weak bodies. Human diplomats sat in the back of the council chamber and said nothing while others decided their fate. Many alien species thought humans were stupid. They confused human patience with human weakness. They did not understand that humans were watching, learning, waiting. The Velthari were a proud species with 4 eyes and purple skin. They controlled a large part of the galaxy and believed themselves superior to all others. When they discovered that a human colony called New Bizan was built near their sacred nebula, they were angry. The nebula was a holy place for their religion. No one was allowed near it. The truth was that the Velthari had not visited this nebula in 400 years. They had forgotten about it until human ships started passing nearby. But pride is a dangerous thing. The Velthari demanded that humans leave immediately. The human colonists asked for time. 3 million people lived on New Bizan. They had built homes and schools and hospitals. Children had been born there. Old people had died there. Moving everyone would take months, maybe years. The Velthari gave them 1 week. When the week ended, the colonists were still packing. They were working as fast as they could, but 3 million people cannot move quickly. They needed more time. The Velthari sent their fleet. Admiral Yuna was a woman of 43 years. She had served in the human navy for 20 years, always following orders, always staying calm. She commanded the defense ship Eternal Dawn, which was supposed to protect New Bizan during the evacuation. She watched the Velthari fleet arrive on her screen. 12 massive warships against her 3 small vessels. There was nothing she could do. The Velthari did not even bother to speak to her. They simply opened fire on the planet below. Yuna stood frozen as fire rained down on New Bizan. The cities burned. The forests became ash. The oceans boiled. 3 million human beings, including 200,000 children, died in less than 1 hour. When it was over, the Velthari commander sent a single message. The area is now clear. You may leave. Yuna did not respond. She could not speak. She could only stare at the dead world that had once been full of life. The Galactic Council met to discuss what happened. Species from across the galaxy sent their representatives. They talked for many hours about law and tradition and sacred rites. In the end, they decided that the Velthari had done nothing wrong. The nebula was sacred. Humans had been warned. The destruction of New Bizan was regrettable but legally justified. Ambassador Taiho received this news in silence. He was an old man now, 67 years of age. He had spent his entire adult life trying to earn respect for humanity in the galactic community. He had believed that if humans worked hard enough, if they proved themselves useful enough, the other species would eventually accept them as equals. He had been wrong. Taiho requested one final meeting with the full council. The representatives gathered in the great chamber, a room so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species filled the seats, looking down at the small human standing alone on the speaker's platform. The Volthry representative smiled with all four of his eyes. The insect-like Kreth clicked their jaws in amusement. The crystalline Somari glowed with bored patience. Taiho cleared his throat and spoke in a calm, quiet voice. For 30 years, humanity has served this accord faithfully. We have worked your minds. We have cleaned your stations. We have died in your wars. We ask for nothing but basic respect. He paused, looking around the vast chamber. You gave us contempt instead. You laughed at our pain. You killed our children and called it justice. The chamber was silent now. Something in the old man's voice made even the most arrogant species pay attention. You have made a mistake, Taiho continued. You have confused our patience for weakness. You believed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war. He reached into his coat and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was an old-fashioned thing, printed with ink on processed wood. Humans had strange traditions. Today, we correct that misunderstanding. He placed the paper on the ceremonial table. The United Earth Federation formally declares war on the Galactic Accord. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the laughter began. The Volthry representative nearly fell from his seat. The Kreth made sounds like breaking glass. Even the serious Somari allowed themselves small smiles. Humanity controlled 12 star systems. The Accord controlled 11,000. The human navy had perhaps 200 ships. The Accord had millions. This was not a declaration of war. This was a joke. High Counselor Vereth, the leader of the Somari, raised one crystal hand for silence. His voice rang through the chamber like bells. We accept your declaration, Ambassador. When your people are ready to surrender, we will discuss the terms of your punishment. Taiho did not respond. He simply bowed once, turned, and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the laughter continued. No one noticed the strange smile on the old man's face. No one wondered why a species that had just signed its own death. Warren seemed so calm. No one thought to ask what humanity had been doing during those 30 quiet years. They would find out soon enough. 6 months passed after the declaration of war. The galaxy waited for humanity to attack. They waited for human ships to appear at their borders. They waited for demands or threats or desperate pleas for mercy. Nothing happened. Human space went completely dark. No signals came out. No ships crossed the border. The 12 human systems became silent, like a room where someone had turned off all the lights and locked all the doors. The Accord sent spy ships to investigate. These small, fast vessels were designed to be invisible. They could cross into enemy territory, gather information, and return without being detected. The Accord had used them for thousands of years against many enemies. Every spy ship that entered human space disappeared. No explosions. No distress signals. No debris. They simply stopped existing the moment they crossed the border. High Counselor Vereth called a meeting of his military advisors. These were the greatest strategic minds in the galaxy, beings who had planned and won countless wars. They studied the situation and came to a simple conclusion. Humanity was hiding. The destruction of the spy ships was probably automatic defenses, they explained. Simple mines or detection systems. The humans themselves were clearly deep in their territory, cowering in fear, trying to build up enough courage to surrender. Vereth accepted this explanation. It made sense. What else could such a weak species do against the might of the Accord? But not everyone agreed. Specialist Mira was a young officer serving on the reconnaissance vessel Silent Watch. She was Telvari, a species known for their sharp minds and careful thinking. Her job was to analyze data from the border sensors, looking for any sign of human activity. What she found worried her. The human border stations were still running. Their power systems were active. Their communication arrays were online. Every hour, they sent out standard automated responses to Accord hails. If the humans were cowering in fear, why were their border defenses still working perfectly? If they had retreated to their core worlds, why was every system along the border still fully powered? Myra wrote a report expressing her concerns. She suggested that humanity might be preparing something. She recommended caution. Her commanding officer laughed and deleted the report. Mira was young and inexperienced, he said. She did not understand how war worked. Humanity was finished. Everyone knew it. Myra said nothing more. But she began keeping her own records, watching the border with growing unease. Deep inside Earth's moon, something incredible was happening. From the outside, Luna looked the same as it always had. Gray and cratered, it hung in Earth's sky like it had for billions of years. But inside, where no alien eyes could see, the moon had been transformed. Tunnels stretched for thousands of kilometers through the lunar rock. Factories built weapons that should not exist. Shipyards constructed vessels that broke every law of physics the galaxy believed in. General Dahin stood on a platform overlooking the largest shipyard. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Below him, thousands of workers moved between massive structures. Ships took shape in the darkness, their hulls black as space itself. They did not look like any vessel the galaxy had ever seen. They had no visible engines, no weapon ports, no windows. They looked like shadows given solid form. Commander Jiwoo walked up beside him. She was younger, barely 40, but her eyes held the same weight of responsibility. She carried a datapad showing the status of their preparations. "The Hammer fleet is ready," she reported. 300 vessels, fully armed and crewed. They can launch within 6 hours. Dahyun nodded slowly. "And the Ghost Protocol?" "Active across all systems. Our communications are completely hidden. The Accord has no idea what we have been building." "What about Project Sunrise?" Jiwoo paused. Her hand trembled slightly as she pulled up the relevant data. "Sunrise is online. Full deployment is possible in 47 hours. Do-hyun closed his eyes. Project Sunrise was their final weapon, a technology so powerful that even he was afraid of it. They had spent 20 years developing it in absolute secrecy. If the Accord ever discovered what it could do, they would have destroyed Earth immediately, regardless of the consequences, but they had not discovered it. They had been too busy laughing at the primitive humans to notice what those humans were creating. "Begin final preparations," Do-hyun ordered. "Contact Admiral Yuna. Tell her the fleet launches at midnight." Jiwoo saluted and hurried away. Do-hyun remained on the platform, staring at the ships below. He thought about his daughter, who had died on New Bizan. She had been a teacher there, working with young children. She had been 31 years old. He thought about the 3 million people who had burned because the Accord considered human lives worthless. He thought about the 30 years of humiliation, of bowing and scraping and pretending to be weak. No more. Across human space, the silence began to break. Lights flickered on in places that had never appeared on any Accord map. Hidden doors opened in asteroids and moons. Camouflage stations dropped their disguises. Ships began to move. Not the small primitive vessels that the Accord knew about. These were something else entirely. They slipped between dimensions, traveling through spaces that alien scientists had declared impossible to access. They gathered at rally points in systems that did not officially exist. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her new flagship. It was nothing like the Eternal Dawn, the small defense ship she had commanded at New Bizan. This vessel was a predator, Built for one purpose only. War. Around her, officers worked in calm silence. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They were ready. All ships report ready for combat, her executive officer announced. The fleet awaits your orders, Admiral. Yuna looked at the star map displayed before her. Somewhere out there, the Velthari Third Fleet was patrolling. Confident in their power, certain that no enemy could threaten them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Signal all ships, Yuna said, her voice steady and cold. We move in 1 hour. No mercy, no prisoners, no retreat. The bridge crew responded with fierce determination. They had all lost someone at New Bizon. They all carried the same fire in their hearts. The galaxy had forgotten something important about humanity. They had only seen humans smile and bow and accept abuse. They thought that was all humans could do. They had forgotten that humans were also the species that invented war. That humans had spent their entire history fighting each other with terrible creativity. That when humans truly wanted to destroy something, they found a way. The Accord was about to remember. The Velthari Third Fleet was the pride of their species. 48 capital ships, each one larger than a small moon. Crews of veterans who had fought in a dozen wars. Weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Commander Rothax stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars with all 4 of his eyes. He was bored. His fleet had been patrolling this empty sector for months, waiting for an enemy that never came. The humans were cowards, just as everyone said. They had declared war and then run away to hide. Probably they were already preparing their surrender. Rothax almost felt disappointed. He had hoped for at least a small battle to break the boredom. His sensor officer made a strange sound. It was not quite fear, not quite confusion. Something in between. Commander, I am detecting something. Rothax turned, annoyed. Something? Be specific. I cannot be specific, sir. The readings do not make sense. There appears to be... The officer paused, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. There appears to be a hole in space. Many holes. All around us. Before Rothax could respond, the universe tore open. They came from nowhere. Not from hyperspace, which the Accord had used for thousands of years. Not from any form of travel that Rothax recognized. They simply appeared, as if reality itself had opened doors to let them through. Human ships. Hundreds of them. Black as the void between stars, moving without visible engines, surrounding the Velthari fleet in seconds. Rothax opened his mouth to give orders. He never finished. The human weapons made no sound. There were no bright beams of energy, no explosions of missiles. The Velthari shields, the strongest in the galaxy, did not even flicker. The weapons simply passed through them as if they did not exist. Rothax watched his sensor display turn red. Ship after ship disappeared from the screen. The flagship shook as something struck its hull. Alarm screamed. Crew members ran in panic. In 17 minutes, the entire Third Fleet was gone. 48 capital ships reduced to expanding clouds of debris. 50,000 Velthari sailors dead. The humans did not lose a single vessel. News of the disaster spread across the galaxy like fire. At first, no one believed it. The Third Fleet destroyed in minutes? Impossible. The reports must be wrong. Then the humans attacked again. And again. And again. The Kreth lost their border fortresses in a single night. The Somari watched helplessly as human ships appeared in their home system, destroyed their orbital defenses, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The Telvari found their communications cut off. Their relay stations reduced to dust by weapons they could not even detect. Within 1 week, the Accord lost more territory than it had in 3,000 years of wars. Captain Yunji commanded the destroyer, Vengeance of Bezin. She was 29 years old. with short black hair and eyes that held no warmth. She had been born on the colony that the Valkyrie destroyed. Her parents, her brothers, her childhood friends, they had all burned while the galaxy laughed out every time her ship killed an enemy vessel. She whispered the same words. 3 million souls demand payment. Her crew heard her sometimes. They understood. Many of them had lost family on New Bizen as well. They fought not just as soldiers, but as mourners seeking justice. The Accord realized they were losing. Their individual fleets were no match for human technology. They needed to combine their strength to gather the largest military force in galactic history. They called it the Grand Armada, 4,000 warships from every species in the Accord. Valkyrie dreadnoughts, Kreth carrier swarms, Silmari crystal destroyers, Telvari stealth frigates, the most powerful fleet ever assembled, representing the combined military might of 47 civilizations. High Counselor Vareth himself took command. He would lead the Armada to victory personally. He would crush these upstart humans and remind the galaxy why the Accord ruled the stars. The two forces met at the Vareth Nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that glowed with the light of dying stars. Admiral Yuna faced the Grand Armada with 300 ships. The Accord commanders laughed when they saw the human numbers. 4,000 against 300. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Vareth gave the order to attack. The Grand Armada surged forward, weapons charging, shields at full power. They expected the humans to run or surrender. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The human ships did not retreat. They spread out in a formation that the Accord tacticians did not recognize. Then they activated weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Reality itself seemed to break. Ships that had been whole suddenly existed in multiple pieces. Shields that had never failed simply vanished. Crews found themselves exposed to the vacuum of space, their vessels torn apart around them. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, the Grand Armada was nothing but debris fields and emergency beacons floating in the nebula. Human losses: 14 ships. Not destroyed. Damaged. Vareth sat in his command chair, surrounded by darkness. His flagship was dead, power systems destroyed, life support failing. Through the shattered windows of his bridge, he could see the distant lights of human ships circling like predators. A sound echoed through the dying vessel. Metal cutting. A human boarding pod attached itself to the hull and began burning through. Vareth had lived for 800 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had believed himself wise in the ways of the universe. Now, as human soldiers entered his bridge with weapons raised, he understood how foolish he had been. The humans had not been primitive. They had not been weak. They had simply been patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true strength. And the galaxy, in its arrogance, had given them every reason to use it. A human soldier approached Vareth. Her face was hidden behind a dark helmet, but her voice was clear and cold. High Counselor Vareth, you are now a prisoner of the United Earth Federation. You will face trial for your crimes against humanity. Vareth said nothing. There was nothing to say. Somewhere in the nebula, Captain Yunji watched the Armada's flagship go dark. She whispered her prayer one more time. 3 million souls demand payment. The payment had begun. The human advance stopped without warning. One day, their fleets were pushing deeper into Accord space, destroying everything in their path. The next day, they simply stopped moving. Their ships held position at the edge of Accord core territory, weapons silent, engines idle. The galaxy did not understand. Victory was within reach for humanity. The Grand Armada was destroyed. No military force remained that could challenge the human fleet. The capital world of Selmara Prime lay undefended, Its 18 billion citizens watching their news screens with terror. Every species in the Accord expected the final blow. They expected human ships to appear in their skies, burning their cities, taking their worlds. They prepared for the end of everything they had known, but the humans did nothing. Ambassador Taiho sent a single message to the Emergency Council. A group of surviving representatives hastily gathered after the disaster at Varith Nebula. His message contained only 4 words: "I request a meeting." The council agreed immediately. They would have agreed to anything. They were desperate, frightened beyond anything they had ever experienced. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years now trembled like children before a storm. The meeting took place on a neutral station, far from any planet or fleet. The council representatives arrived in their finest ceremonial robes, prepared to offer everything they had: territory, resources, complete surrender. Whatever the humans wanted, they would give. Taiho arrived alone. He walked into the meeting chamber without guards, without weapons, without any display of the power that humanity now held. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. His hair was completely white now, and his movements were slow and careful, but his eyes were clear and sharp as ever. The council representatives sat in a half circle. Before him, Belthari, Kreth, Silmari, Telvari, and dozens of other species. They were the leaders of the galaxy, beings who had commanded fleets and governed billions. Now they looked like frightened animals. Taiho did not speak immediately. Instead, he activated a small device on the table before him. A holographic display appeared, showing images that made several council members look away in shame. New Bizen burning. 3 million humans dying in fire while Velthari ships watched. The mining accident on Kepler 7, caused by safety systems that the Accord had ordered removed to save money. 12,000 humans crushed or suffocated in the darkness. The Children's Hospital on Europa. Its funding cut because human medical needs were not a priority. Young patients dying slowly because no one cared enough to help them. Mass graves on a dozen worlds. Broken families. Quiet deaths that never appeared in galactic news reports. 30 years of suffering that the galaxy had ignored. The images played for a long time. When they finally stopped, the chamber was completely silent. Taiho spoke in a voice that was almost gentle. "We could end you. All of you. Every world. Every species. Every trace of your civilizations." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Our weapons do not require crews. They require only coordinates. We have calculated that the complete sterilization of Accord space would take approximately 6 standard days. We could kill more beings in 1 week than have died in all the wars of galactic history combined." Several representatives were crying now. Others had gone pale or stopped breathing entirely. The Kreth made sounds like breaking glass, their species' expression of absolute terror. But that was never the point. Taiho walked slowly around the table, looking at each representative in turn. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. "We did not declare war to destroy you. We did not build our fleets to conquer your worlds. We did not spend 30 years preparing for this moment because we wanted power." He stopped and turned to face them all. "We did this to make you see us, to make you understand that we are not tools for your convenience. We are not pets to be kicked when you are angry. We are not lesser beings whose children can be killed without consequence." A Velthari representative, a young female who had replaced the commander of the attack on New Bizen, found the courage to speak. Her voice shook badly. "What? What do you want from us?" Taiho smiled. It was a sad smile, tired and old, but there was no hatred in it. "We will withdraw to our original borders. We will release all prisoners we have taken, without condition or demand. We will even share the medical technology we developed in secret, treatments that could save millions of lives across the galaxy. The council members stared at him in disbelief. This made no sense. They had expected demands. They had expected punishment. They had expected revenge. In return, Taiho continued, "We want only one thing: equality. Nothing more. Nothing less." He placed his hands flat on the table and leaned forward, looking at each representative with calm, steady eyes. "Treat us as you would treat any other species. Give us seats on the council. Allow us to own property and travel freely. Listen to our voices when decisions are made. Do this, and we will be the most loyal allies you have ever known." He straightened up again. "Continue as you were, and there will not be a next time. There will only be an end." For a long moment, no one spoke. The council members looked at each other, seeing their own shock and confusion reflected in alien eyes. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to nod. The Telvari representative was the first to stand. She was an older female named Kira, known for her wisdom and fairness. She had always argued that humanity deserved better treatment. She had always been ignored. Now she walked around the table and stood before Taiho. She extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "On behalf of the Telvari people," she said, her voice steady, "I accept your terms. I offer my personal apology for the suffering we allowed to happen." Taiho took her hand and shook it gently. "Thank you," he said. "That is all we ever wanted. To be seen, to be heard, to be treated as equals." One by one, the other representatives rose and offered their own acceptance. Some apologized. Some simply nodded in shame. A few still seemed confused, unable to understand why humans would show mercy when they had the power to destroy. Taiho understood their confusion. But he also knew something they did not. Vengeance was easy. Mercy was hard. And humanity had learned long ago that the species that chose mercy, even when revenge was possible, was the species that truly won. The galaxy had taught humanity many lessons in the past. 30 years. Now humanity would teach some lessons of its own. The Treaty of Equal Stars was signed on the first anniversary of New Bazan's destruction. Representatives from all 47 species gathered in a grate, all built specifically for this moment. It floated in space above the dead world, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been learned. Through its transparent walls, the representatives could see the scarred surface below, still gray and lifeless from the Velthari attack. Admiral Yuna stood at the back of the hall, watching in silence. She wore her dress uniform, decorated with medals she had never asked for. Her face showed nothing, but those who knew her could see the weight she carried. She had won the war. She had avenged her people. But victory felt hollow when she thought of all the lives that could never be returned. Ambassador Taiho sat at the central table, looking older and more tired than ever. The doctors had told him he did not have long to live. The stress of the past year had broken something inside him. But he had refused to rest until this moment came. One by one, the representatives signed the treaty. Their marks glowed on the document, binding their species to promises of equality and respect. The junior species designation was abolished, not just for humanity, but for all developing civilizations. Never again would a young species be treated as servants or slaves. The accord established a new office called the Department of Cultural Integration. Its purpose was to ensure that no species would ever be marginalized as humans had been. Any civilization that joined the galactic community would be welcomed as equals from the very beginning. When the last signature was complete, Taiho rose slowly to his feet. The hall fell silent, every eye focused on the old human who had changed the galaxy. "We did not want this war," he said, his voice soft but clear. "We did not want to kill. We did not want to destroy. All we ever wanted was to live in peace, to raise our children, to explore the stars alongside our neighbors. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of beings from dozens of different species. You taught us that peace must sometimes be earned through strength, that those who will not fight for justice will never receive it, that kindness without power is just weakness waiting to be exploited. He paused, taking a slow breath. But we hope to teach you something as well. That strength without kindness is just cruelty. That power without mercy creates only fear. And that the galaxy we all share is large enough for every species to find their place. He smiled, the same sad, gentle smile he had shown at the council meeting. Let us build something better together. The hall erupted in applause, not from obligation or fear, but from genuine hope. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy had a chance to become something more than a collection of species competing for power. 2 years passed. The galaxy changed slowly, like a great ship turning in the void. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. Old fears took time to fade. But change did come, one small step at a time. Human technology spread across known space. Medical treatments that had been hoarded in secret now save millions of lives. New methods of agriculture ended famines on a dozen worlds. Clean energy systems replaced dirty power plants that had poisoned entire ecosystems. Humanity asked for nothing in return. They shared freely, helping any species that asked for assistance. Some called this foolish. They said humans were giving away their advantages, weakening themselves for no reason. They predicted that the old ways would return, that humanity would regret their generosity. They were wrong. The species that received human help became humanity's strongest allies. They remembered who had offered kindness when they needed it most. They taught their children about the strange creatures from Earth who had won a war and then used their victory to help others. Ambassador Sori was a young Velthari female, barely 30 years old. She had been appointed to represent her species on Earth, the first Velthari to live among humans since the war. She was terrified when she first arrived. Her people had killed 3 million humans. She expected hatred. She expected anger. She expected to be treated the way her species had once treated others. Instead, she found something unexpected that the humans welcomed her. They showed her their cities and their art and their strange, wonderful food. They answered her questions with patience. They laughed with her when she made mistakes and helped her understand their customs. On her 3rd month on Earth, Sori visited a place called the Pacific Ocean. She stood on a cliff, watching waves crash against rocks that were older than her entire civilization. The wind was cold and the salt air was strange, but she felt something inside her chest that she had never experienced before. Peace. A curt, young human diplomat named Hanol stood beside her. He had been assigned as her guide during her stay on Earth. He was quiet and thoughtful, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I do not understand, Sori said finally, her voice carried away by the wind. You had everything. Absolute power. You could have enslaved us. You could have destroyed us. Why did you give it up? Hanil thought about the question for a long moment. The waves continued to crash below, endlessly patient. My grandmother used to say something, he replied. She said that strength is not measured by what you can destroy. It is measured by what you choose to protect. He turned to face her, and Sori saw something in his eyes that she had never expected to find in a human. Forgiveness. We never wanted an empire, he said. We never wanted to rule over others. We just wanted a family. A community where everyone has a place at the table, where no one is too small to be heard. He smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. Welcome to the family. Sori took his hand. Her 4 eyes were wet with tears that she did not try to hide. Across the galaxy, species that had once laughed at humanity now studied their history. They read about human philosophers who spoke of love and justice. They learned about human artists who created beauty in the midst of suffering. They discovered human scientists who shared their knowledge freely, human doctors who healed without asking for payment, human teachers who educated anyone willing to learn. Slowly, almost without realizing it, the Galactic Accord began to change. Not because they feared human weapons, though the memory of the war remained fresh. They changed because they had finally learned to respect human hearts. The memorial for New Bazan was completed on the 5th anniversary of the colony's destruction. It was a simple structure, a ring of white stone floating in orbit around the dead world. Inside the ring, holographic displays showed the names of every person who had died. 3 million names scrolling endlessly. A reminder of what had been lost at the center of the memorial. Carved in stone that would last for millions of years was a single inscription. They thought we were weak because we chose peace. They learned we were strong because we chose it again, even when war had proven we did not have to. Admiral Yuna visited the memorial often. She would stand before the names, reading them one by one, remembering the people she had failed to save. But she no longer felt only grief. She also felt hope. The galaxy had changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but it had changed. And that change had begun with a choice. The choice to show mercy when revenge would have been easier. Yuna thought about the future, about the children being born across the galaxy who would never know the old hatreds. They would grow up in a universe where species helped each other, where the strong protected the weak, where kindness was valued as much as power. That was humanity's true victory, not the destruction of the Grand Armada, not the conquest of enemy territory, not the fear they had earned through war. Their true victory was the peace they had built afterward, and that peace would last for 10,000 years.